Hey guys, this is a video tutorial for the add-on I made called SKC. That stands for Suicide Kings Classic. So it's an add-on for World of Warcraft Classic, and it's an add-on to help a guild with the loot distribution method of Suicide Kings. So if you don't know what that is, by the way, I'm going to post in the description here of the video, I'm going to put a link to the GitHub project where you could look at the README. There's most of what I'm saying here is written there, as well as some links to like resources about SK and some other stuff. So basically, yeah, this video is going to be a general introduction to the add-on from the perspective of just like a regular user, a normal guild member. We'll go over a bunch of the different features of the add-on. I'll talk a little bit about the background of or like what SK is to understand what the add-on is doing. I'll give you a kind of demo of how loot distribution looks from the perspective of a user when you're kind of prompted with the loot decision GUI. Yeah, so like I said, to get started, we'll just kind of briefly talk about SK system in general. If you don't know, it's basically just an ordered list, and when loot drops, whoever wants the item, of all the people that want the item, whoever's highest up in the list gets the item, right? And when they receive the item, they drop down in the list. The version that I've implemented here has a couple kind of additional enhancements to that, which revolve around loot prioritization. And the loot prioritization is kind of a separate, complicated topic that'll have its own small video, but here we'll kind of touch on it. And the other important key difference is this add-on supports two separate lists, the main SK and the tier SK. So to get started, I have the add-on installed in my client, and we're just going to log on to a bank character, which is an alt, who is actually in a guild where no one else in the guild has the add-on installed. So this will mean we'll just see kind of a blank version of the add-on. We'll talk about that first. Yeah, one of the prerequisites to use the add-on basically is that the guild leader needs to also have it. So we'll see what happens when he doesn't. So I typed SKC there, right? That's what opens the main GUI. Here you'll see some like initialization message, a welcome message. So it loaded up. Yeah, just a blank GUI basically, not too interesting. This is where the SK list would populate if there was data. We'll talk more about the GUI in a little bit, but the main thing here I want to talk about is that this status message, inactive GL. So the status message will either be active, disabled, or inactive. Active means you're good to go, and the add-on will distribute loot automatically with the SK system. Disabled means the master looter has manually turned it off, and inactive will have a little extra message here describing why it's inactive, which means it doesn't meet some kind of status check. And real quick, I'll point out here, note this synchronization, like waiting thing. We'll talk about that in a second. So for the inactive GL, yeah, this means that your guild leader doesn't have the add-on installed. And this is a requirement because we need to know what version of the add-on the guild is running, and therefore like what data can be transmitted and how the transmission works. So basically, yeah, this will mean that you won't ever synchronize because your guild leader isn't going to populate the data. Synchronization. So synchronization is a key part of how the add-on works. Everybody's add-on will automatically synchronize with everyone else in the guild. Because of how the WoW API works, it's a little bit complicated. There's a lot of kind of checks and steps that need to happen in the background. But from your perspective, basically, this will say one of four things. Either it'll say that waiting thing with a number ticking down, which we saw. So that happens when you log in. Upon logging in, the add-on will start checking with everyone else in the guild, who has the most up-to-date data, and whoever has the most up-to-date data will synchronize with everyone else. So that means after your kind of request is answered by someone in the guild, you'll see one of two messages, which is pushing or reading. Pushing means that you have the most up-to-date data. Perhaps you were in a raid more recently and you have some new data that other people online don't have, so you'll push that data. or reading means that someone else had more recent data and you'll receive their data. And then complete means that you have synchronized with with your entire guild. So everyone online has the same data. You're all looking at the same SK list and the same guild data, some other stuff. So that waiting status, you'll note that in this case it just ticks down all the way to 0 and then it said complete. So that can happen, right, if you're the only one online, or in this case, like no one else has the add-on. It just means that as far as the add-on can tell, you have synchronized data because no one else is online, no one else responded, so your data is the only data. Great, so not too interesting to look at the blank GUI. We're going to log off of this character, and we're going to jump onto a character which does have a guild with the add-on. So this guy, I know that the guild leader does have it installed, and we're gonna see how synchronization works in real time here. So again, /SKC. So initially, right, we're starting out, same thing. Addon doesn't know the guild leader exists yet, and we're requesting synchronization. So again, because of how the WoW API works and some throttling that goes in the background, this can take a bit. It's not always going to be instant, but we'll see. There we go. So someone has answered. Right now we're reading in some data, right? It looked like the loop prio just updated, so we read in some data there. And you'll notice that status changed, right? Now it says inactive raid. So this is the second check, which is in order to use the add-on, again, in order to have loot distributed, you have to be in a raid. So that's not met. Cool. And notice everything else looked like it populated up okay. So now we've got a list of names. This is our SK list. This is the top position and the bottom, right? Colored by class. You can filter on this thing by role, DPS, healer, tank, main or alts, active, inactive. All these filters work how you'd expect. These persist over each session, so you could set up the filter the way you want, and it'll stay like that. So I mentioned there's two lists, right? This is the main SK list. If you want to see the tier SK list, you simply click the title, and it'll cycle over to a totally separate list, which is the tier SK. So now, if you click on anybody's name in here, you'll see some details about them. Name, class, are what you'd expect. Spec is something that's specified by the guild leader. So, for example, this guy's a balanced druid, right? This guy's a resto shaman. This becomes important for how the loot prio works. So yeah, we'll talk about that in the loot prio video. The raid role is tied directly to the spec. So resto is always a healer, rogues are DPS, etc. Balanced druids are DPS. And this is just used for filtering, right, to make your life easier and looking at the list. The guild role is either none, disenchanter, or banker. So these are used in the event that a loot drops and everyone passes. There's some configuration the guild leader can do to distribute that loot out to a disenchanter or a banker. Status is either main or alt. This again is used in the loot prio, so certain items can be configured to give prioritization to mains over alts. Activity, this is just kind of a convenience for the guild leader to keep track of like who's been active, and this activity is based on the last time you were added to a live list, which we'll talk about in a second, which is basically like you're in a raid and the add-on was enabled. And then it's dependent on this last raid. This is the most recent time that this character was in a raid. And when this value goes above the activity threshold, which again the guild leader can set, then you'll switch to inactive, or they can manually set inactivity, of course. So what else is here? A couple more things. There's loot prio, right? This just tells you the number of items in the database. Loot officers. So again, this is just the count of loot officers. But what a loot officer is another check and another kind of control for the guild leader to manage where this add-on is used. So it's related. You'll see that in the status here in a little bit. but there's basically a list of names that the guild leader creates, which are all the players in the guild who are kind of allowed to be master looter for the add-on. So if you try to form a raid and a loot officer isn't the master looter, the add-on won't enable, and you won't be able to, edit the SK list or distribute loot with the add-on. Similarly, there's actually something called active instances, which are the list of all instances which basically the add-on is approved to be used in by the guild leader. And it's another check we'll see here in a second. Cool, so I think that's everything. To do a little demo, we're gonna form up a raid with my other character here, this guy standing next to us. So we're gonna invite him to form a raid, jump back and forth a little bit. So this guy, of course, has the same add-on, right? It looks all the same. So first check, we're gonna convert to a raid, right? Boom. Now we've satisfied the raid condition. Now we just need to, so this ML means master looter. So we have to change the party group loot distribution method to master looter. Do that. Now we get an LO. This means a loot officer, right? This thing. And the problem is that Fresnik, this character, is the master looter. So I'll talk more about slash commands in a little bit, but if you type SKC LO, this is loot officer, it just lists out all the loot officers. So we'll see that Fresnik is not a loot officer, so it's disabled. And same thing on this guy's side, right? It's disabled. So what we can do is we can promote this guy to be a loot officer. To be master looter. So because he's on the loot officer list, now we've passed that check. So this last thing, AI, is active instance. This means we're not in an instance which the add-on is intended to be used in. So we're going to jump into RFC, which is on that list, and we'll make sure that the add-on is enabled. All right, so I jumped into Ragefire Chasm, and you can check out the add-on. We can see that now status is active, right? So RFC is now is on the active instance list, and just being in it means that we've met all the conditions and the add-on is active. So now that the status is active, we can go ahead and do the instance. I'm gonna go kill some mobs in here until we find something we can distribute, and we'll see how the add-on distribution process works. Cool. So we went and killed some trogs. We got some cool loot that we want to distribute. Actually got 2 items on one boss, which is one mob, which is cool. So so we got to this point. The master looter is ready to loot these items. Real quick, I should talk about the live list and the way that works. So everyone in the raid is part of the live list, which is you can click here and see who's on the live list. In this case, there's only 2 guys in the raid, so it's just them. Same thing for TRSK, you can see it. The master looter can add other people to the raid, or to the live list via the bench, which you can talk more about in the master looter video, but basically it's a way to add people who aren't in the raid. Yeah, so cool, so these items dropped. The loot prio doc that's loaded in has these 2 items, in fact, and again, we'll talk about that in a separate video, but you could look at the loot prio of these items by typing SKC LP and with a link to that item, or you could type out the name if you wanted, and you'll see that Shadow Gem, sure enough, is in there, and it's associated with the TRSK. This is the prio, people who have prio on this thing, and we can see that it's also got an open role option. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off for the Shadow Gem by just basically the add-on uses the master looter interface to kind of trigger the event and to send the loot out. So as soon as the master looter right clicks on the item to open the master looter interface, it starts the event. So that got started, and it popped up with this little GUI that's separate from this thing, right? And just ticks down and shows your options. You could SK, you can roll, or you can pass. In this case, roll is enabled for this item. So I'm going to have Pascal go ahead and choose to roll. And on the other character, who also got the option, right, he's also going to roll right before time runs out. So in this case, Pascal won it, right? He rolled an 81 apparently. So good job, Pascal. You got your shadow gem. So that loot's been distributed. This other item, right? We can do the same thing. We can do SKC LP. And we can see that this one is actually a main SK. It does not have a roll option. So for this one, let's keep an eye on how the main SK list changes. Right now, we've got Pascal at the top. So I guess he's been holding out for this sick edged bastard sword of the boar. So if he SKs, and we can see in the prio, he has the same prio as any of the shaman. So if he SKs, then he's going to win. So let's go ahead and see what he does. So Pascal is going to go ahead and main SK. And Fresnik, let's say he also SKs. So it looks like Pascal did in fact win. And we just got a message that Pascal won the item. And he won it by a main SK. And he went from position 1 down to 46. Cool. So seems to work how you'd expect. Pretty straightforward. Just to click those buttons. There's some extra stuff that the Master Looter can do, especially to correct for mistakes, which I'll talk about in the Master Looter specific video. But that's basically it for loot distribution. To wrap this video up, I will talk about the last bit, which is all the slash commands. There's some extra stuff you can see. We saw some of them here. So if you type SKC help, it's going to pull up a list of all the available slash commands. In this case, this character is a Master Looter, so he has some extra ones. But all the basic ones are here. For example, we know what the first two do. The third one just displays the version of the add-on. So that's also right there on the GUI. Loot Prow, we saw how that worked kind of already, but you can just do LP to see how many items are there, or you can do a link to an item, right, like we did before, and it would show the prio of the item, print out this big thing. B is for bench, and this just simply shows us the bench. SKC AI does active instances. It shows all the raids or instances for which the add-on is enabled. This is set by the guild leader. LO is similar, loot officers. It shows all the loot officers for which the add-on is enabled. AT is activity threshold. This just shows the same data that's right here, which is the number of days that the activity threshold is set at. And then there's an export option, which anyone can do. It's just to export the SK list as a CSV. Let's say there's a main SK column and there's a tier SK column. So if you want to keep records of it or do some kind of, I don't know, data analysis on it, feel free to export it. You just would copy and paste this out into like a spreadsheet. And the last general command that everyone has access to is reset. So this just basically purges all the data, all of your local data. So it'll just clear all the lists. In fact, we can just do it. I'll make sure to show the full list. So see, just cleared everything, right? So if there's some issue, maybe you're stuck synchronizing, perhaps you could do that. If you're a regular user, there's not too much harm in it, because as soon as you reload your UI, which by the way you can just do RL, or you relog or whatever, it's gonna re-trigger the synchronization process, and you're gonna get some fresh data from whoever is online that has that fresh data. So you can see we basically just like restarted the whole add-on, and we're gonna confirm that it'll just resync with somebody. Yeah, so we're just reading in some data, same thing as before. Cool, so I think that's everything that I want to show for kind of just general usage of the add-on. Like I mentioned, there's going to be some other videos for more specific audiences, like if you want to know more about how loot priority works, or if you're going to be a master looter, or if you're a guild leader. There's some other videos. So thanks for watching, and hope that was helpful.